Thank you. Welcome to this festive lecture, this annual traditional festive lecture where we invite a remarkable international landscape architect to come and join us to give his speech, to give his lecture on where landscape architecture is today, have been, and what you see. Today we have Günther Vogt with us, a long-lasting friend of the country, done projects here. I also know from many that knows you have been work with you that they told me that we should look forward for a very great lecture. So I'm looking so much forward for that. And as I was saying, while there was a lot of noise, you just were rewarded the Sir Geoffrey Jellicoe Award, which is the finest award the International Landscape Society, IFLA World, can give, and therefore we felt that it was maybe not necessary, but necessary is a strong word, but an obligation to dive a little bit deeper into to this. So, with no more further ado, and hopefully no more noise from weird installations, welcome, Günther, and I'm looking very much forward for your lecture.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for your introduction. Okay, it's a very special time. You see it, 25 years of the office, and I'm handing over it to my younger colleagues. And if you are interested how I do it completely different than all architects. So these colleagues are not partners. I hand it into a foundation, and finally I give it to the people, because afterwards they only have to finance the foundation. All 5 offices we have, they have so 30% they can keep, 30% the office, and 30% in this foundation. And this foundation is doing research work, and it's coming from my colleagues. When I left the ETH, normally you have to leave when you're 65. If you get the Nobel Prize or the Pritzker Prize, you can stay. Since a landscape architect will never get it. So they asked me to stay 2 years longer. But then my colleagues told me, you know, we have to replace the university. And then I asked why? Because a lot of theoretical thinking, research is coming from the university, and we cannot do it in a normal landscape architecture office. So we need this addition, this 5th office. It's in Zurich, near our normal office. It's connected underneath with a kitchen. Normally we have a cook cooking lunch, and so they have a good connection. And I have to tell you, unfortunately, there are 4 or 5 people working, only architects. They are interested in landscape research. That's a real problem. We can discuss it afterwards if you don't agree. But we have to do more research, and it's not so easy for my colleagues in the normal office to do it besides the normal project. Therefore, we found out we have to do it independent. And then in the beginning, I thought, okay, 30%, it's for free. You don't have to bring money with projects, but meanwhile, they are all paid. So they are doing this kind of, does it make sense to build lakes in the Alps in Switzerland to produce snow in winter time? So then we found somebody was so interested in that she said, if you make it public accessible, I finance it. So that every ski resort in Switzerland can now use your checklist, also altitude, exposition, and so on. Does it make any sense to build a lake? I mean, mountains are like this, the lake like this. Does it really make sense? And then we did a case study for this company. And the next one is, again, now it's all paid. I always said, okay, you do it without being paid, but again, flooding agricultural fields, this size, to cool down the landscape and the city nearby. And how can we organize? How does it work? And so, but again, we started without being paid, but meanwhile we are paid by the government. So that's super interesting to have besides the normal projects, this more research project. And by the way, we are not artists. We are definitely not artists. We are working with artists together. And I will show one. And that's very important, especially for the artists that say, no, we are not artists, we are advisor or technical advisor, whatever. So, you know, all these topics coming up now, and every year something new, and my students were coming second year, you know, biodiversity, sustainability. I said, guys, we are discussing this for 15, 20 years now. It's not new, but since you find it out. And the one is reuse, especially the architects are talking about it, but we have it in landscape as well. So I'm showing this south of London. South of London was heavily bombed by the Nazis, and you still have a lot of plots, empty plots from this Second World War. Therefore, this school could go there. And here as well, the condition was we have to use the existing soil. That's really, I had a discussion today with a student or several students. The soil is becoming more and more important. And here the soil is completely contaminated. And then in the planning applications, they told us you can keep the soil, you can move it around, or you take it away. But take it away and clean it would be more expensive than the building. So in the future, we will find new solutions for the soil. We had a similar project in Milan with OMA, Rem Koolhaas. We won the competition. There's a real problem, it's not visible. I mean, it's a contamination of the soil. And we did a project to clean it on site in the next 25 years. And the next problem, you see it, there was a very rare, for the Londoners, South London, a very rare black red star. You find it everywhere in Switzerland. Nevertheless, in south of London, it's very rare. So they told us you cannot plant trees because the crows are sitting on top and attacking this small bird. And what does the red star, black red star need? Loose gravel. And it was a used car deposit here before, perfect habitat for this bird. So we didn't plant trees, and especially for this red bird, but then we find what is the local horizon. We didn't want to be higher than the low-level building around the site. You see it here. So there is a relationship to the urban environment and not higher than the buildings. It's super ecological, but you don't see it. And that's more and more for us, this kind of invisible nature of many of our projects. And it's not coming from us, it's coming from the conditions around. And of course, you can only do it in the UK. Here, perhaps, but I mean, it's raining every second day, let's say. It's never raining when I'm in the UK. But then you can do this stepping down with lawn. And that's really a specific English culture. And then they can use it as an auditorium. So more and more we are dealing, you will see more projects like this with artificial nature. We never use the word nature in the office. always landscape, garden, park, whatever. Never nature. I mean, nature in Switzerland doesn't really exist since the so-called Waldsterben. It was coming from Eastern Europe, and I was in the street as a student, and we said, yeah, in 2025, like today, we will have 50 or 80% less forests. You know what the reality is? We have 50% more, because the abandonment of the Alps and the change and the stopping the coal power station in Eastern Europe, that's like today, everybody's telling, I told it to the students, within 50 years, it will be 2 degrees warmer. First of all, nobody knows what it really means, 2 degrees. The American president is saying, I have air conditioning in my tower in New York. That's not the solution. That's the problem. No? And so we are more and more facing these problems, which we so-called normal citizens cannot understand what 2 degrees means. And here is the FIFA, you know, the World Football Association, which is a headquarter in Zurich. I only show a courtyard. They wanted to have all so-called nature of the 5 continents. I said that's a bit difficult, and we need a greenhouse, what they didn't have. So, but in the central courtyard, we proposed North American rainforest with mammoth trees, and so yeah, and we wanted to have this dialogue between artificial and so-called natural. So we built around 8 or 9 of these trees. I have to explain Switzerland. You see, it's on top of a car parking, 5 stories. Every tree is 15 tons heavy, 15 tons. This you can only do in Switzerland. You know, so they are really, they love to build underneath. When you ever come to Zurich, what you see is 40%, 60% is underneath. I think that has to do with the Second World War, when they wanted to go into the mountains, leaving the families, I mean, the women and the kids in the Mittelland, and the men in the holes of the mountains. But since then, they are really focused on this aspect of building underneath. And so today it's completely covered. It's very interesting that people working there, they really believe that these are natural trees, that there was a forest before, because they cannot go closer than 3 meters. And meanwhile, moss and even small birches are growing on top. And they really believe that this was nature before they came here, and not realizing that they are parking the car just under the trees. But that's more a detail. It's very, very typical Swiss of understanding. And so you see the real mammoth trees, and next to it is artificial. So it's a bit so this kind of dealing with time. What you more and more get is the nature is more and more coming into the buildings. We have several projects. I'm not always happy with it, but architects are asking us to produce nature in a building. But then you have completely different climate. It's not so easy as the maintenance and the climate to do it. Or if you have it like in the zoo in Zurich, we are working currently for the zoo in Zurich for the next 30 years. One project is a high-rise building, 70 meters high, 7,000 square meters. You're a landscape architect, you know what I mean. 7,000 square meters, 70 meters high, for 4 orangutans, because they have to be up there, and so they have the babies for 10 years after us. They're really taking care for the young for 10 years around it, but they have to be above in 70 meters. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But then you have to ask yourself, when you go in such a rainforest, and I was in Madagascar in this rainforest, how can you translate it? I mean, you cannot copy such a. It's super boring for normal people because all light gray stems. You don't see any leaves. You don't see any flower, and on the ground is not one plant growing, but every day raining. So you have to translate it, and we found out what is the most interesting forest for people in Zurich or in Switzerland. This is I don't know how it is in English or in Denmark. It's a medieval kind of forest maintenance where you take out, let's say, you build a house, and then you need this tree, and so on this tree you need for fire, and then you have trees from every age, and this is what people really like. So this expression sustainability, Nachhaltigkeit, is coming from Germany, from the forest maintenance in Germany around 200 years ago. And so that's what people really like. Every age, very old trees, young trees, middle sized trees. So we translated it, and when I do guided tours there, people are always obsessed. And I explain it, what they see. That I tell them it's not the truth. This is not Madagascar. But then the next problem was in a landscape, I'm always looking, where is the horizon? In here, you never have a horizon. I mean, this you are in. So then I asked the zoo, said it's not Madagascar. Everybody knows Madagascar. We say it's Mazoala, peninsula on the east coast of Madagascar, other side of India. So Mazoala, nobody knows what it means. So this is the horizon. And it really works, I think, very good. And, to have this experience, and I mean, instead of having a polar bear in such a thing, constantly running up and down, here it's the opposite. The animals are completely free, and of course, no dangerous. Perhaps some snakes. The people are always leaving animals in the zoo when they go on holidays. But it's not dangerous, but you have a direct experience, and that's new. That means that the zoo is getting 2 times bigger in terms of surface, but 30–40% less animals. So it's no more the landscape, the environment is interesting to show, and not just a bird in a cage. So a project, unfortunately, not realized. It's for a big pharma company, Novartis in Basel. We did many things on their headquarters, a park, and many projects. But this was not realized. It was together with Peter Zumthor, one of our best projects, I think. So it's in a wonderful landscape in the center of Switzerland. And what you see is a painting by Turner, and he was exactly standing in the park we did a project. So, and he painted, and of course, it's a blue, the rosa, and the red series, because he was saying, yeah, in Switzerland it's all nice, but the light is not good. So he copied the English light, the twin light on top of it. And it is exactly this position where our park, and of course a lot of buildings in. And of course I read his text. It was very interesting. Why is he so fascinated from it's not only the mountains, but in front where this park is, its the topography is extremely dramatic, from the glacier up to 80–90 meters. And so this is our concept. And again, I told today's students, stop with this mapping. It's really endless mapping. It doesn't help in the end. And then the mapping fits into your project. But please try to give your site or your landscape a profile. And here it was, most of the time it's already there. You only have to open your eyes. And here it was very clear that there's a hill, a valley, and a delta. So that means all these things coming from the glacier times. And then this was the starting point, and we told Peter Zumthor, you shouldn't, on the villa today, or then, was, the villa was of course on top here, and here is the lake, beautiful view from here. And we told him, you shouldn't build a house on top there. You should keep it free. It's 90 meters higher than the lake. Yeah, and then he started, so, okay, I don't build into the ground. Yeah, you can, the rest. So hotels, 40, 50 hotels, all on columns. All buildings are on columns. And we proposed the meadow and of course the trees. So then in these columns are up to 5-6 meters, and the people staying overnight are in the middle of these trees and special meadows and so on. So, but in the end, you didn't see it from the lake and you didn't see it from the street, the building. It was completely in a landscape. I would say it wasn't even a park. It was kind of park landscape, and it's difficult to describe. And then we, of course, you see now how we translated it into a concept with different spaces and a lot of research. That's I forgot to say. The students, they always throw it away. What they do in the semester, please build up your own library. I mean, what we have in Basel, Zurich, Hamburg, it's unbelievable, this material. You can use it perhaps in 3-4 years from now. This digital, yeah, you always think, yeah, it's here, but in 3 years, you don't know where it is on your computer. Build up your knowledge, respect your own knowledge, what you learned. And, that's the reason why we can do this kind of project, especially in Basel and Hamburg. And then we did we are working with pigments, colors. We are working with herbariums, and then we did a real herbarium. And the client, the big boss of Novartis, told me, but you cannot cut down. And I mean, we had Phragmites up to this, and 1-to-1, all metal. And then said, listen, every farmer is doing it at least one time a year. Why shouldn't we do it? I mean, he was so upset that we cut down plants. And what's going on? And then you realize the distance between reality and fiction is going faster and faster. And of course, we built all our models in all our projects in models, and we built 2 models, one in Peter Zumthor's office, one in our office, and he brought us the buildings, and we brought him the trees, so we could work in parallel. And that was really an experience and all people in our office and in his office could constantly exchange because of having the same model. So Tate Modern, I mean, I'm always saying landscape is a cultural production. You can, of course, you can work in Hong Kong or in wherever, and as an architect, then you can build a hotel there. The problem is landscapes is not a climate problem or a different climate or whatever. The problem is the difference in culture. And even here in Europe, I mean, when you go to London, it's not the same. And when we started, they really liked our approach in doing research. And here is this work from Mark Dion, who collected all the plastic along the River Thames. And the outcome was then this wall in combination with Hatton de Meuron's museum. But when I'm saying a cultural production, when I started, it took me 2 years to understand the English. Quite not criticizing as the English are. And then they told me after a while, your proposals are all looking like from a Frenchie. And then from a Frenchie? What do you mean? Trees in line, trees in a grid is brutal. We don't accept it. Okay. And then I thought, since my background is Mediterranean culture we have in Switzerland, and then I said, yeah, but we need a plaza. You expect 7 million people. No, we need grass. Okay, but now they have to exchange it so many times. But I couldn't believe, and you don't need benches. I saw it here in this park. It looks like so English. They have such a different understanding. And when my people from the Paris office and the London office, we meet once a year to do a field trip, I always have to sit in the middle because immediately, what do you mean with paysage and landscape? It's not the same. And it's not so easy to find out what is the difference. And that's what I mentioned with this Laban dance school. Hopefully there is no English here, one left. They really have an erotic relationship. They love to touch grass. You even see it in the Chelsea flower, elderly women between 75 and 80, they come with a basket and then they sit on grass, even it has rained half an hour before. They really want to sit. They have a completely different understanding as we continental European, and especially with landscape and parks and gardens. And of course, it was for me very clear. Everybody, even landscape architects, are asking me why birch trees, and I said, what would you expect along a river and a former industrial area? What tree would you expect? See, birch trees. It's very simple. No? So, and but now they are changing it because of biodiversity. But I came from the airport here. I saw really many birch trees, only birch trees. It's a type you can find in Siberia, in Russia, even here in the north. Why? I mean, this biodiversity is okay, but then it's becoming a topic. Yeah, it's very difficult. If it's finally, then biodiversity is an aesthetic problem, and I will show you why. Then the last one, looking back, the Eiffel Tower, the city of Paris wanted to do a new project, and we told them the story about this garden. This garden was in the beginning a neighborhood park, and then this monster came on top of it, and then the story is endless. But when we explained, it's just an image what we are doing. It's for tourism to make photos, because as a neighbor, you would never wait 3.5 hours until you get through the security check. That's the time, not in high season touristically. It's in March when I was there. 3.5 hours when it's not a neighborhood park. It's been such a small park. So we decided then with the city of Paris, we do a specific time. We selected one because it was so often changed, and so we restore it in a specific time. And not for the usage of today, because you have so many million visitors, they would all destroy it if they would use it. So it's therefore, it's a historical monument, and it's underneath another historical monument. And then we do it, this technology as well, you know it, this concrete tree trunks. So we find craftsmen in Paris for the grotto, which didn't work anymore, no waterfall coming down. So, and it's finally, it's a touristic view. It's not, it's no longer a neighborhood park as it was in the beginning, very interesting. And so, not going. So, some thoughts about the future, and I'm happy to discuss it afterwards. I'm always interested in discourse. What are the landscapes of the future? And we can only reflect it from our offices. And where will the gardens grow in the future? For instance, we are doing internal teaching every 3 or 4 weeks, so all offices together. And we invited a botany professor, and I told him, can you please explain, my colleague, why all this facade green it's stupid. No, it's just stupid. And he is one of the most famous professors at the University in Basel. And he explained, my colleagues, why it is, you cannot say it's sustainable or whatever. It's nice if you like it, but then it's an aesthetic argument when you want to have a green facade. That's okay, but it's an aesthetic argument. Don't argue with sustainability and all these things. The only exception was the roof. The roof is really, it's getting very dense. You have photovoltaic, nature, technical infrastructure, and then what can we do there? But it's really, there we are in concurrence with so many other disciplines, but he is really saying that's interesting, the roof, because in Zurich it's a law since 35 years. Every flat roof, we have to have green vegetation. And after 30 years, if you have all these small pieces of land on the roof, it is 4 degrees cooler because of this. But again, it's over time. You cannot just come and say, yeah, it is. But it is 4 degrees in the city center. And 4 degrees is quite a lot in summertime. And then you can do something like that. And of course, even for the biodiversity, it's good. So it's really focus on the roof and not the facade. The facade is an aesthetic question. I'm not against it, no. I don't know why all architects want to hide their facade. Perhaps they should design it in a better way and start hide. But that's my question. So it's a huge, and if you have, of course, such a dimension, you have it quite often in Europe, really huge buildings. And I even had it at CETH. Next to me is an institute, a huge roof, completely black. No photovoltaic, no green. And we are teaching the students underneath, yeah, you have to do. And there is a potential, even in future, I think, with existing building, not only with new buildings. So I told you we are not doing art, but in this case, it was we were asked by the client, a technical university. They wanted to have, how did they say, how do you bring technology and nature together? And then I said, okay, perhaps you should ask an artist and he can do reflect. No. We want that you do it. And so we did it, and as you see. And the photovoltaic is, of course, on the roof, and the energy is transformed in an element for this plaza in front. But the most interesting thing is we wanted to have a discussion, an exchange with the students. No? First, they didn't realize because that's super fast. In reality, it's changing in 24 hours. So it's 2 millimeters. It's so slow that you don't see it. And then I said, but guys, don't you see the tree? Don't you see the benches underneath? It's not the same as yesterday. No? And then they realize you have to look closer and really. Then again, we are doing quite a lot of exhibition, and I would be happy if more landscape architect would. We just finished last week in the Architectural Museum in Zurich, an exhibition about landscape architecture, and we should do definitely more. And because we realize when we do guided tours and so that the people have a lot of questions, architects, not only citizens. What is behind you? It's not so easy so to explain, and that was the reason for distance and engagement we did. Was one of my colleagues coming from the architecture. The architects have really a problem to understand how you work and what is the difference to architecture, and we should really do more. And at the Biennale in Venice, you know, they asked us to do something inside and about this glacier topic, and then they asked us, can you do something in the garden? And then Olafur brought all the people doing an exhibition together and bring a piece, an object of your exhibition. Then I said, hey guys, it's enough now. No, it's so we did. What did we do? We took Venice as an example. We built a model, an architectonical model of a city out of clay. And of course, as you can imagine, not burnt, so but really clay pressed. And what was it? Then all these plants are invasive species in Venice. Then we explained, you know, and in the end, I don't show the end of the, but you know, it's a little hill of clay. You know? It's within half a year, it was really eroded, and in the end, you had all these invasive species growing on top, and was and you see it here. You see, we marked it like in a botanical garden. So people could read, and we explained it's not from here. However, it got on this island. And that's what I'm saying, that biodiversity is an aesthetic question. I know people from Denmark and you, this is for you a nice image. For most of Swiss people, this is ugly, not maintained, not keep down. And then again, this is a perception of an aesthetic perception, not the content. They don't see that is, by the way, this is in Basel, but it belongs to the German Bundesbahn. It's abandoned. More than 600 species, animals and plants are growing there. So it's an absolutely hotspot of biodiversity. But people not knowing why is it so important, and that doesn't really look maintained like in a park, then they don't agree. I think here it's much better if, since you have this type of vegetation along the sea and in the center of Denmark. And then this title, How Will We Live Together? When I was asked inside and outside to do it, and then I asked the director of the Biennale, but what do you mean with we? If you mean animals, plants, rocks, and human beings, all of them, then we can do an exhibition format. And he agreed, yes, you can do it. And since when Olafur came in the end asking for an object, we showed the glacier melting in Switzerland, and then we bought a so-called rolling stone, a boulder with rolls, and then you could touch the stone like a person and move away. More to make it visible, what are you really interested in? And we will have to do in future more with animals as well. And this is a work with Olafur as well, the Baylor Museum. So he opened the facade on one side and flooded. It's not the first time we flooded museum, but behind this are Picassos, and you can't believe it. I couldn't believe that the museum agreed. But to bring this uranium, these green colors, and it's more because of the light. At night time, it was so beautiful, unfortunately, during COVID. And now it's closed again. But there was a water pond, or is meanwhile again, by the Renzo Piano project for this building. And of course, it was for people very interesting, but after a month or so, you had frogs, you had a little snake inside. And so it was all, so nature was really coming in, and it really worked. And what was for me interesting, the discussions of the visitors, because they don't know me, and then I can walk around listening what they are talking about. And this was for me the most interesting part. What is the perception of these people? What do they see in such a environment which they are used to see famous and expensive artworks, and now is in nature? By the way, a year later, the real flood came, and they had really to bring all the artwork within a night outside. It was a real flood, and then everybody thought that it was from us, but it was really. And here as well, it was a museum that was then open until 10 or 11 in the evening, but it was beautiful, and especially when the sounds of the frogs came in, and it started to mix this idea of landscape. So finally, I promise I will talk about glaciers to the students as well. So it's that's how it is or was on the left-hand side, how it will be end of this century. And that's why I'm saying, who is responsible for this landscape? Here I'm showing, with our students, we did a research topic in the Swiss Alps. And then, this village was destroyed after a landslide. And then after 3 or 4 days, the media found out that our students told us 5 years ago that this will happen. And then since then, we are constantly in the press. But my question is really, who is responsible? Oops. Who is responsible for this landscape? Nobody. In Switzerland, we were the only one taking on board. And you see, the light blue are the glaciers. The dark blue is when the glaciers are melt. And that means more than 2,000 lakes in Switzerland. So that means a completely new identity, a completely new landscape. The forests are growing 100 meters per centigrade. So that means, because in the Alps it's much warmer than that, not only 2, it's 5. So the forest will be on 500 meters. So a completely new landscape. who is working on it and who is responsible to have an answer. You cannot just wait and it will happen. So therefore, I just told the students this afternoon, we are not doing this mapping. This is from a whole semester, we are asking the students, can you give this landscape a profile? Meaning, is it for tourism? Is it for hydropower? And so, and we always did this mapping like everybody does it. But then I found out we have to change it. And we said, okay, now you have 3 weeks or 4 weeks to do your research or your so-called mapping. But we have a question to you. Can you do research about erosion and stabilization? Looking at me, what do you mean? Exactly what I said, erosion and stabilization. Yeah, you mean geology. These were architectural students. Well, for instance, but perhaps urbanization is the same. Erosion in the Alps and stabilization. Come back with an answer of these 2 words. We are asking that you do research. And then they did a profile, not a program. And they discussed every evening during this semester, exchange. One believed it has to be tourism, the next said it has to be hydropower. And it was a really discourse amongst the students without us. And I found this a wonderful topic. And this one student said today, of course, this little alpine hut is done by the ETH, super high-tech thing. And the glacier is underneath and the Matterhorn, so she's super touristic. And now what you see, your eyes are romantic like my eyes. What you see is a very romantic lake, but this is to keep water back as drinking water, to protect underneath is Zermatt, one of the 2 hotspots of Switzerland in tourism. And he found out, yeah, drinking water, hydropower, and tourism. We have to bring all these aspects together. But he was showing in between, this landscape is so dangerous. If the ice is disappearing, you cannot let tourists in because it's super dangerous. And next is you have permafrost. So it's falling into the lake. And then the tongue of the glacier, if it is falling into the water, you will have boom, a tsunami in Zermatt. So it's super dangerous and it's super technology. You have to find a solution. Nobody is like this landslide in Wallis. Nobody is thinking about. And then they told me, yeah, you know, in 5 years from now, we will rebuild it, and you will not rebuild it. It's full of ice and mud. No machines can be on top. Then I said, but listen, you have another problem. No insurance will give you new insurance for your new house. Why? Look at the maps of my students. It's still dangerous. It's too dangerous to live there. And they don't accept it. Yeah, we lived here for some 100 years, our family and so on. Yes, but something changed. And that's really a problem with perception. And this is by Lucius Burkhardt in the same position. So you just have to frame and say, okay, it's beautiful and it's a perception of landscape. Of course, it's a bit idyllic, but in the end, it is like that. So to explain these people now, your mountains are white, then they're getting gray, and in the middle, they are green. But you don't have glaciers anymore, but you will have lakes. And the lakes are mirroring your mountains, and you have to have a new perception and a new view on the same landscape. And in this case, it's really a discussion with society, and we should really start. We cannot say today it will be like that in 160 years or so. we have to have a constant discussion. Otherwise, many projects will arrive. And here they wanted to build a huge water dam for hydropower. And now, of course, no landscape architect integrated. And since they saw our work, they said, yeah, perhaps it would be good if you advise us with the landscape, and said, okay, we can do it. But it's open. The result, you cannot ask us that we give you freedom to build whatever you want. We have to a responsibility, people living under your dam, and it's super dangerous. And they really went 2 steps back, but meanwhile they're on board again. And there and here in Denmark, you have the same problem. You have here water coming from the land side and the seaside. It reminds me in Lisbon, they have the same problem. And who is responsible? Here you have marine engineering, of course, but the landscape architects in the future should take more responsibility. Thank you.
I think we have time for a question or two. If anyone, yes? No? Sorry?
First of all, thank you so much for your inspiration. I was wondering, of course, about the subject that the students should keep their sketches and not rely so much that everything kept on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that in our digital world, we more rely on the computer, we get a little bit detached from this field of landscape architecture where they build out the texture and everything. Now everything is getting so digital.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mean only the sketches, I meant all research, because you have digital research. For instance, at this exhibition, we worked with mushrooms who are gluing in the night. You have to keep it, because in 3-4 years you have to do this research again, because nobody knows where are these mushrooms coming from. Bioluminescence, it was beautiful. No? But you have to keep all your research material, digital or analog. I'm saying you have to build up, and it's the rest of your life. It's whatever it is, a text in a book, an address, who somebody is producing this or that. Everything, whatever it is, you research, you have to start a library. It's too big, my colleagues are saying, but Günther, we lose ourselves. Then they start to go into this and they find out so many things, interesting things. It's no. We took over this library by Lucius Burkhardt. They wanted to throw it away. They couldn't find an antiquary who takes all these books. Can you imagine? So then we took it over, and now it's in our office, and we have students and PhD students coming in the library, but they wanted to throw it away. Can you imagine? It's really strange. No, we have it digital as well, and it was a lot of work to bring it in a frame, because I cannot use a computer. No? And to bring it in a frame where it's accessible for everyone working in the office, no? To find whatever research we already did. So.
Well, we're biodiversity is maybe an aspect of aesthetics, which of course many things are aesthetics, materials, and programs. I don't think it's also just as much as aesthetics. Of course, this messy look. Biodiversity often makes things a little more messy than people are used to, especially in Switzerland, seemingly. But do you not also think it's a matter of programming? Because biodiversity is not just something you arrive at when you know, the shovels are put away and the site is open. So it's a sort of process that you also plan to program over time, where you find species and different activities, and as with landscape, it changes. So beyond the aesthetic component of that, which you can also impact yourself.
Yeah. Yes, my problem is more the discussion is only about aesthetics. That's the problem. We, the zoo in Zurich, asked us, for your master plan, can you think about an exhibition about biodiversity? In itself, it's a bit, because it exists. I mean, you have a zebra, an elephant, whatever, and the space in between, that should be the so-called exhibition. But what they are coming with is always, you know, this bee hotel. When I live, my God, this is a marketing act from Garden Center. No? They are all coming with these images in mind, not understanding, and say, but yeah, you know, if you have such a small pot on your balcony, it should start there. It's too complex. If you really explain it, you can do it there. Real biodiversity is a process. It's not that it's really changing. That's very important. But they have really images and photos and everything in mind, how it should look like. And when I say, but in 5-10 years, it will look completely different. Otherwise, biodiversity is not working. It has to be, it has to change somehow.
Thank you so much, Günther.
Thank you.
Yeah, first, I've been saying that landscape architecture have momentum. Now I'm stepping down. Maybe the next chairperson should say something like the landscape architect needs to take responsibility. That is my key takeaway. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.